Typically there is no one behind the camera to tell me if I'm in shot or if I'm not. So often there's a lot of pushing the button, going, sitting down, smiling, running back, stopping the recording, bringing it back up, checking over it, just to see if I've done it right. We're going to go more towards the end of the book here. This is, of course, there's a mark in my book. This is one of my favourite chapters, but of course I don't pick favourites. They're all my favourite chapters. A walk through the northern estate of the village was a poor man's dream, and one Modal made every day. It was his duty as the head elite to report to the Lord at the beginning of every day, and depending on what happened, or if the Lord wished it, we'd have to see him again at night. This was one of those evenings. The Lord summoned him. The Lord's castle was a massive structure in the northmost part of the great village. Any further north, and you would be traversing the endless desert of the Netherlands. No other building in the rich estate was as large or well built as the Lord's castle, and by the law of the land it was deemed so. The only structures allowed to be taller were the 4 light towers burning bright in the sky, in all 4 quadrants of the city. The castle was built of sandstone, some places using steel and even concrete to keep it strong. The interiors were all designed with wood, and every inch of it was replaced with wood at the end of every cycle. The front gate was a Clayton steel doorway, the height of 15 men standing on one another's shoulders, and could only be opened with a system of chains and pulleys that required so much strength it was performed by a tremble. Guards were lined at the front of the castle walls in a single file, wearing the standard uniform fitting of a lord's guard. Tight-fitting shirts under armoured sashes, and a steel pauldron starting at the top of one shoulder and trailing down to just below the elbow. All stood unmoving under the shadow of the front gate. Modal paid his respects to each of the sandstone statues at the front of the castle walls dedicated to former lords by giving them the same reaction he did every day, walking right past. Later lords seemed to have bigger and bigger statues, each of them wearing the pig skull. The same skull Hall wore every single day till he disappeared. He built the castle, hunted many beasts, and started this great civilization, and then he disappeared without ever showing his face. The helmet was all that was left behind. "Modal," called one of the guards directly front and centre of the gate. Modal was out of uniform. The Lord requested he wear something nice today, and therefore was in his red and grey spotted and striped robes. He was still wearing his mask. It sat tightly on his face. Tied to his hip was a steel-crafted mask shaped like a scarabaeus of the Canyonlands, the symbol of Modal's strength. It was far too big to fit his face, however. "Young Bennett, I have you on guard duty now," Modal asked. "For now, sir, watching over our Lord is a highly respected job," said Bennett with mild sarcasm. "Yes, very," Modal agreed. "I will push for you to be sent to the medical divisions. You're wasted here." Bennett's eyes lit up. "I look forward to any opportunity I can get." "Open the gate, son," said Modal. The guards all came to life and in unison stepped out of the way of the entrance. After a moment, the steel doors swung open and swallowed Modal. Stepping into the courtyard and following the stone path directly forwards, past the trembor pulling the thick chain work on the door, the slight rumble in the earth seemed to make the creature uneasy and harder for the guards to control. The gardens were well kept, the grass trimmed just to the edge of the pathway. The stone statue of Hall depicted him killing a tremble and standing atop its corpse. Modal continued onwards, entering the main building of the castle. The entryway was vast and mostly empty besides the servants who were sweeping the floor of dust and wiping down tabletops. All along the walls were weapons, animal skins, and paintings, and at the end of the room was a giant staircase ascending to the next floor. Modal continued upwards, moving through more big, mostly empty rooms, until he took a spiral staircase leading directly up to the 5th floor, the dining room, where the Lord held all his meetings. Standing in the entrance to the room was his ally and fellow elite, Germain, wearing his own robes in white. At the other end of the room, on the far side of the long table holding up the mountain of food and wine, was Lord Khan, the latest in a long line of lords. He was of average height and size. The pig skull helmet sat loosely on his head and wobbled every time he did. Sitting next to him was Annabelle, known to many as the Fat Priestess. She was the #1 defender of the Lord and never left his side. Though she was not a hunter, warrior, or guard and wore no mask, she was considered on an equal level to the elites. She even had a long green spotted and striped robe and a tiny green hat over her short black hair. "Modal, elite hunter of the great village," Khan cheered, standing to his feet and raising his porcelain mug, spilling red blots of wine all over himself. Modal just gave Germain a friendly nod and proceeded to the table, stopping at the edge directly opposite Khan, right in front of the roasted Telepagus. "My lord, you are drunk," said Modal. "You've met Germain, yes?" asked Khan. "Yes, my lord." "And the Fat Priestess?" "Once or twice, if I'm not mistaken," Modal explained, knowing full well he worked with both of them intimately and regularly. "Swadiak and Torb didn't come with you?" asked Khan, looking around Modal's large body to find any stragglers. "Sir, you summoned me all the way from my home on the southern quadrant to the village. I was just about to eat with my wife and daughter," said Modal. Khan looked at Modal, confused for a moment, trying to remember why he summoned him. "I summon you?" he asked. "Yes, my lord. A young hunter by the name of Samuel came right to my door to tell me." "Well, you can lay your wife later. You haven't eaten then?" asked Khan. "No, my lord," said Modal, scrunching his face. Khan raised his cup once more, spilling another few drops onto the tablecloth. "Then come sit next to your lord and feast," he cheered. Modal looked around, becoming frustrated. "Sir, we should talk about this tremor activity, perhaps?" he asked impatiently. "What tremors?" slurred Khan. "They are far too frequent for my liking. It would only take a moment to have Germain look into it," said Modal. "No need! It's Canyonland, and Canyonland has tremors. Now sit with your lord." Modal turned to Germain to make eye contact, and as a natural response, he made his way down the stairs. Modal then went to the far side of the table to sit with Khan and Annabelle. The Fat Priestess was smoking from a wooden pipe and was quick to offer Modal some when he arrived. He held his hand up to decline her generous offer, opting for the wine instead. He prepared himself a cup. Khan refilled his cup to the brim and then lounged back in his chair. Annabelle puffed and drank away with him. The two of them had been sipping all night. Modal peeled the lip of his mask up and over his head, placing it in front of him. His jaw was wide and his forehead was long. Grey hair stretched around the sides of his crown. With his mouth clear of obstructions, Modal took a long drink to help him talk to the drunk lord. Khan began giggling to himself quietly. "Modal, do you remember that time Swadiak beat you at a fight?" "I'm having trouble recalling, my lord," said Modal. "Annabelle, do you remember that?" Khan giggled. "The way the young fella handled my head of the elites?" "Like it was yesterday, my lord." Our head elite here couldn't land a single hit. Embarrassing, really, but I must give the boy a hand. He is an incredible fighter. Beat Torb's apprentice Markowski too. Shocking display from that one, Annabelle admitted, the two of them laughing at Modal's expense. Well, it's a good thing we don't hunt men, Modal giggled. Ha! Of course, said Khan, pressing his lips back to the cup and chugging what was left in there. There was a heavy rumble in the earth as he did so, and wine spilled out of the cup and went up his nose and down his top. Gah! Blasted wine won't stay in my mouth, Khan complained. My lord, the tremors are getting much worse. We should really... Nonsense! Nothing will ruin my perfect evening with my closest friends and my drink, said Khan. I will hear no more about these tremors. Modal plunged a chicken leg into his mouth and bit right through to the bone, ripping off a big chunk of meat and chewing it down. He wondered what was taking Germain so long. He was normally much quicker. Lord Khan opened his mouth to speak, pushing the wine into her cheek. Anyways, where I was going, bringing up fighting, I was thinking, Annabelle. Khan swallowed. We should throw another tournament. It's very exciting for the young hunters, guards, and warriors. And cut me down now if I say I don't love watching a good fight. We had one last week, sir, and the week before it, said Annabelle. We'll throw another one, said Khan. Suddenly, Germain burst back into the room, losing his footing a little in the doorway as the building shook. What is it? Modal asked, standing from his chair, knocking it over. Germain was short of breath. It was much too dark for any of you to see it. It's covering the entire night sky with its size, he said. We need to get out of here at once and alert the village. A creature is causing these tremors, Modal queried. Evacuate the Lord. I will go nowhere. I will not leave my castle on the basis of some silly superstitions, said Khan. There was a sound of repeated grunts growing from the stairway, the clump of hooves stomping against the wood grain, and the rattle of a steel chain dangling behind it. Modal stood to attention, and Germain backed out of the way as a tremor charged through the open doorway in a blind rage, attacking anything in front of it. Modal moved to intercept the creature, something that would throw any man off his feet. But Modal was not just any man. He began to grow in size very quickly, gaining more than 4 times the muscle mass, another 2 feet of height, and limbs the size of solid tree trunks. The transformation destroyed his nice robes. The beast didn't back off. Instead, it ran right into Modal, who picked up the creature in one hand and slammed it into the ground. The creature tried to swipe and claw at Modal, so he snatched its hand and pulled on it, dislocating its shoulder and then punching it in the face with his free hand, braining and killing it in a single punch. Blasted guards can't control one pig, Khan complained. Shut your stupid, drunken mouth, my lord, Modal shouted, turning around to face him. Don't you dare speak to our lord that way, Annabelle threatened, standing up from her chair. Our precious lord is not in the right mind to make decisions right now. That is not your place to decide. It is time to leave now. Modal motioned over to a set of stairs, taking him to the rooftop. Germain followed him, and with slight resistance, Annabelle dragged Khan up there as well. It was pitch black. Not a single star could be seen in the night sky. The tremors were getting enormously loud, and the epicenter got closer by the moment. Germain, can you see it? Asked Modal. Germain placed his hands on his temples, and his pupils rolled back in his head. He had left his body, but not a moment later, he snapped back and began shouting, Get off the roof now! Modal grabbed Germain, Khan, and Annabelle in his freakishly large hands and leapt off the side of the building. As they cleared the surrounding wall, something big, a leg, came crashing down behind them, destroying the entire castle in a single step. Debris and thick layers of dust flew out in any direction it could escape to. Modal and the team were now falling. 6 floors on the castle was a long way down, and leaping would mean death for just about anyone. Annabelle placed her hands on the Lord and Germaine and created a smooth white bubble around everyone. It got bigger and bigger, encapsulating even herself. The group descended into the dense cloud of grey dust, disappearing into its endlessness. There is, of course, plenty more to go on that chapter, but we're not going to be reading that today because it is an extraordinarily long chapter. But be sure to come back tomorrow and we'll be reading more sections from my book. It's all seeming a little bit disconnected at the moment, isn't it? Well, maybe you have some questions that are remained unanswered, so feel free to message the page, maybe see about getting your hands on your own copy. But even if you just want to ask some questions, send us a message. I like questions. See you tomorrow. Shut your stupid mouth, my drunk lord!